And this one is all about getting yourself promoted from ADR to AE. So if you are joining us in the audience here, let us know where you're joining from, what type of role you're in today. If you're trying to be promoted from ADR, BDR, SDR to AE, let us know that too, because that's always exciting. But we have an awesome rock star list of panelists here. So we're going to introduce them in just a second. But before we do, and as you all are getting into the room, my name is Alexine Mudawar. I am CEO of Women in Sales. We are the largest global community for women in the field of sales. We provide educational resources, content, events, workshops, anything you can imagine that's going to help serve women within their sales career. And a big part of our duty is to highlight women throughout that process. So you see a lot of amazing women throughout our many, many events that we're hosting. And we are here co-presenting today's event with Samsara. So Megan, can you introduce yourself and also Samsara up top here?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, my name is Megan. I am a commercial AE manager over here at Samsara. And just to tell you guys a little bit about Samsara, so we just celebrated our 10th anniversary of Samsara here. We're on the New York Stock Exchange. We're IoT. We're publicly traded, and we sell a lot of different products here. But just kind of to break it down in simple terms, we sell GPS and dash cameras with some cool features there.
Awesome, amazing. Juliana, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thanks so much for having me. It's so awesome to see this event take place. I'm Juliana. I work at Samsara, located in Baltimore. So been with the company for almost 3 years now, and I'm excited to talk to all of you today.
Amazing. And Caroline, take us home.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline. Nice to meet you. I'm based out of San Francisco, and I've been at Samsara for 3.5 years. Started as an inbound ADR, outbound, and now I'm a team lead AE. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Very cool. We're going to be diving into each of your career journeys, so I'm super excited for that. But I think before we go there, we have to figure out how you all first got into sales. And the big question is always, did you intend to go into sales or did you kind of fall into sales? So, so Juliana, can you start us off here?
Yes, absolutely. I'm definitely on the latter. I fell into sales. I don't think I had any idea of really what it was, besides cars before I got into it. But I actually was really lucky. When I was in college, I was a marketing major, and I really had no idea what that meant and what path that had for me. But I did take a elective class at my school, Salisbury, which is in Maryland, where I'm from. And it was called Marketing 337, and it was like an intro to sales class. So that class basically skyrocketed everything that I was interested in and made me realize that there was a career for it, which was awesome. But in the class, we actually had to do a like sales role play. So it was a big sales competition that we prepared for all year long. And at the end of it, I really enjoyed the process. I was really excited to do my role play, and I ended up becoming like a semifinalist, and I got to like try out for the sales team. But ultimately, like when I met people on the sales team at my school, they were just super motivated. They were energetic. They were driven. They seemed to really care about their future. And as like a college student, I really like aligned with that and like looked up to them. So I ended up doing the sales team, and I was able to like travel and compete in a lot of different competitions. And that's actually where I found Samsara, at a sales competition in Atlanta. So that's how I found my way there. Just decided that I really liked a little bit of competitiveness, like the high achieving, and then also just the community of really kind, outgoing people. So that's how I fell into it.
Love it. That's so exciting to hear. Yeah. And it's great when we hear that universities have classes. We're starting to see more and more of that finally over these last few years. But
yeah,
it seems like it's always one of those hybrid sales and marketing classes that somehow spurs our ability to understand that there are roles in sales that are not just cars. I was very similar.
Exactly.
So, yes. What about you, Caroline?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know that I always wanted to go into sales, but looking back, the signs were kind of there. I grew up playing competitive tennis, so I've always had a drive to improve and think with strategy, I would say. And during my time in college, I worked a few retail jobs, and oddly enough, I really liked working CRM systems and making sure things were like clean and accurate. So that's when I first started thinking, oh, maybe I could do something more, process driven or technical. And I think that mindset is what drew me to Samsara. I started as an inbound ADR, and that was really my first time taking a shot at sales. And I moved into outbound. That's when things really started to click, building my own process, creating my own path. And now that I'm an AE, I love working here. It's really nice to drive deals, build my own relationships, and I really enjoy working in sales with all the people on a day-to-day basis.
Love it. Love it. Megan, what about you?
Yeah. So I did not plan on getting into sales originally. When I was in college, I was trying to go the route of I wanted to become a nurse. And I was like 2 years into college. I was a sophomore in college. And I started volunteering in the hospital, like actually doing some of the work that I would be doing. And I realized I really didn't like it. And that was not for me. And so I kind of freaked out and I pivoted and I was like, oh no, what can I do? And I don't want to spend too much longer in school than I need to. So I picked a major that was kind of similar, like a health psychology major that I was able to just pivot my classes to. And that was fine. And I figured, honestly, I don't really know what my plan was at that point. But luckily, around the same time, I applied there was like a job opening in my apartment complex that I worked at, or that I lived at, I'm sorry. And for a leasing agent role. And I was kind of intrigued because you could save a little bit of money on your rent. So I was like, sure, let me go ahead and do this. And I started really liking it. And really liked selling leases, helping customers with stuff. And I realized I was good at it as well. And so I continued with that for about 2 years until I graduated. And that was kind of what made me decide I wanted to do sales. So at first I was looking for medical sale routes, but then I also started looking a little bit at like SDR roles and then came across Samsara from there. So it just kind of worked out perfect.
Amazing. Love it. All different ways to get into this. So it's always awesome to hear those stories. Megan, we're going to go right back to you, but I was looking through each of your backgrounds and it's been really fun to look at your career journeys because Megan, you went from ADR to AE to inside sales manager, which is kind of like the dream for a lot of ADRs today. So would love to hear what the journey was like through each of those roles and just get a little perspective.
Yeah, definitely. So I think something that is interesting about each of those roles is I feel like you starting back from ADR, you're building a foundation in ADR that's going to make you very successful as an AE. And if you really build those skills carefully, you will be a successful AE. Same thing with being a AE. The better you are as an AE, the more that you know the role, the better you can coach and teach other people as a manager. So I think really honing in on your craft and getting good at those roles can be helpful. And then a little bit about my journey getting from each role to each role. I would encourage people to, as you're making those, going from ADR to AE to, if you want to go to the next level of AE or you want to go to manager, think about what else is around you at those times and make sure you don't have any regrets. I know when I was an ADR, I also just looked into what it looked like to be a renewals rep if I wanted to apply that route. And as a AE, I also made sure I looked into becoming a mid-market AE and just make sure that you look into all the different routes. And that's also how you can, I'd say the most common route is probably going, AE1 to mid-market AE, AE2. But just being open to things and, considering all the options.
Love it. And as our audience members are here today, a couple quick things. We have a Q&A tab. So if you have questions throughout today's conversation, please drop those into the Q&A tab so that we can get to those at the end of the conversation. And in addition, we have a pinned link to open roles at Samsara. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of those two things. So Juliana, moving over to you. So you went through what I think is every single rank of ADR at Samsara,
Yes.
which is really cool. And it's awesome to see because a lot of companies don't have that level of organization for each of the roles. So beginning with ADR 1 and kind of getting to your current AE role today, what was it like navigating each of those promotions and just getting to where you are? And tell people how many of those promotions you got through too.
Yes. No, I am so excited that you highlighted that. I did have every level of ADR role in the org before I was promoted to AE. So I started off in inbound, which I think a lot of people do. A lot of companies have that. But I do want to point out, you can really, at least at Samsara, you can come into any of those ADR roles and then get promoted to AE. So you don't have to start at the inbound as the beginning for you. But for me, I was straight out of college. That was my first step. And I was in it for about 6 months. So I started off as an inbound ADR, and then I moved to mid-market outbound ADR. So my first time outbounding. And then I moved to what was at the time called Majors, which is now Enterprise Select, which is basically very large accounts. And then I moved to Enterprise Strategic, which is the very largest accounts that, you know, take years and years on end to get closed and get across the line. So very, very strategic. So really started off at the beginning of doing BANT, like quick action, talking to very small business owners, to progressing to working with the top reps in the company, on the highest, you know, worthy accounts in the company. So I did learn a lot. And what I'll say is each promotion, it was roughly like 3 to 6 months, that timeline of being in each role. So I did, you know, I had 4 promotions in that time, or I guess 3 into the 4 different roles. And so it is very challenging. And I want to harp on that because it is tough to move into new roles every single time. I think we all can say that, especially when you're in that path of promotion that's kind of been mapped out for you, like the ADR stairs, I call them. But when you're in that path, it's never like you move into the role and you're like, oh, this is easy, just like the last one. You're usually in that situation where you're kind of like, oh, I was so good at ADR 2 and I felt so comfortable, and now I'm in ADR 3 and my head's spinning, and what if I'm not good at this? So I definitely experienced that primarily when I moved into the enterprise space. I think that is very niche and requires a lot of it's just a lot of pressure. You know, you're working with some really important people on some really important things and having very important calls. But so when I first moved into that space, I think particularly I was really nervous and found it to be challenging and started to second guess myself. And the truth is, you know, all of that is natural. But I will say what led me to be really successful in all of those roles, and maybe the ADRs here can relate to this, is just kind of putting yourself in head first and understanding that it is a normal pace to move this quickly, to get promoted every 3 to 6 months, the way it might not be in outside of the sales org or even in the AE section. And really what I experienced was, like, if I went in and had high activity and just threw myself in and let myself fail, I learned quicker. So I ultimately felt that the different ADR roles like really gave me different foundations and like reoccurring skills to improve upon. And it was the same way too when I actually moved to AE. But yeah, it was a wonderful time.
That's awesome. And it's so cool to see the amount of opportunity that was there and kind of that clear pathway. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But Caroline, we'll go to you before we get there. So you went from ADR to team lead. So always curious to hear about what that transition is like to go from IC to more of like a player coach type of role. So tell us a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. So the transition from ADR to team lead definitely comes with a quick learning curve, but it's helping me grow, I would say, in all the right ways. I've always been super process driven as an IC, but now that I'm stepping into this team lead role, I have to think beyond my numbers and focus more on how I can help the rest of the team. So right now I work with a lot of ramping reps. Those are people that are new to the role. So they really just have to trust me to show them what works. And I really take time to show them, you know, strategic emails, things I've had success with. And it's really a great feeling when they try and it works for them. And to be honest, I get pretty hyped when something I've shown them works for them. But I also hop on demos and discovery calls with them. And it's really just about helping the reps build confidence and showing them how I approach certain conversations. But I think all in all, the best part about the transition is that I've built confidence in new ways. And it's not just about hitting my number anymore. It's about seeing, you know, how I can help other people and help the team succeed as a whole. So really happy with the choice.
Awesome. Yeah, and totally. It's a little bit of a change because you're so used to focusing on like how to I get to my number? How do I hit my success metrics? So you kind of have to do that shift in mindset to focus on the rest of the team. So sounds like you are embracing that very nicely, which is awesome. One of the things we talked about this a little bit already, but I am always really curious about this because a lot of the companies that I worked for didn't really have a clear promotion path. It was kind of a like, just do your job, do well at your job. And hopefully by nature of that you'll get promoted at some point, but it was all very vague and kind of a little bit more fluid. So for many of our members who are at companies that lack a clear promotion path, how has Samsara specifically set up a culture that provides opportunities for advancement? And if you want to take this a layer deeper, what are some of those milestones that your leadership puts in place to help ensure that you're on the path to being promoted? So yeah, would love to start with you, Megan, for this one.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think, is this pertaining more so just to ADR specifically, or?
Let's go ADR for this conversation.
Yeah. So honestly, I think that we have a very well set up, clear timeline. At least it was a little while ago that I was in ADR, but as Juliana kind of talked about, you have those little mini promotions within ADR. So you move from inbound to mid-market ADR to enterprise ADR. You don't necessarily have to go through all the levels, but there are those levels that are there. And where you get a promotion to team lead, but you get those little mini promotions. And every time you get the promotion, you are kind of a step closer to becoming an AE there. There's also a timeline. I believe now it's 18 months is the timeline of being enrolled before you can get promoted to an AE. And then just being above role average. So I honestly think that we just have it mapped out pretty well. These are the things you need to hit. If you hit that, then you are able to be considered for the mentorship and then can interview for AE from there.
Love it. Love it. What about, so if we're thinking about that promotion path for the ADRs moving to AE, Caroline, what about like some of the milestones? Like obviously we can think about meetings booked or some of the obvious, but are there other milestones that you see the company tracking you against?
Yeah, I definitely think there are clear milestones you just mentioned, like opportunity goals and staying consistent with outbound. But for me, I think the biggest thing that made a difference was how my manager helped me connect those dots to my individual strengths. So we didn't really just talk about metrics. We talked about how I was thinking through my process, where I was leaning in, and where I was really starting to act like an AE. And I think just having those opportunities where you speak up were those metrics and milestones that helped me get that path to that promotion. So yeah, really what helped move the needle was just having those conversations with the manager and encouraging me to think outside of the box and really hone in on what makes me different from other reps.
Awesome. Anything else to add in terms of like the promotion path, in terms of any milestones, anything else there before we move forward?
Yeah, I was going to say something that Megan mentioned is that Samsara has something called a mentorship program. And if this isn't present within your current ADR, your company or whatever, I recommend you kind of creating your own, or maybe even escalating that to your manager or something. But what that is for our company at Samsara is when you're kind of reaching that timeline. I don't know if it's 18 months, so we might need clarification on that. But when you're reaching that timeline of you've been at the company, you've performed, you've excelled in your ADR role, and you've showed consistency, then obviously you want to have that conversation with your current manager. But Samsara does like they'll match a ADR that's qualified with an AE manager. And so that's something that I think is like somewhat has been done for a while here. And it gives that ADR a lot of visibility and connection with an ADR manager. So I believe Megan has probably done some of these because I know we did it the last cycle. But ultimately, that is a pretty big milestone and also like a big opportunity for you to ask directly to someone that could be interviewing you what they would want to see, and then running through some of those questions that Caroline mentioned with her manager. So I would say if your company doesn't offer that, I would highly encourage you guys to set time with managers in the AE role to kind of present to them how you've done how you've done as an ADR and like the intentions that you have, and then kind of run through maybe interview questions or just questions about you being a good fit for them and their team. But that's what I would say is a really cool thing that Samsara has put in place that seems to be really successful.
Love it. We got a really good Q&A. So normally I keep all the Q&A to the end. So I'm cheating a little bit here, but this Q&A question will perfectly take us into the next question that I wanted to ask anyways. So Labrela is in the audience and asked, looking back on your time as an ADR, what's one area you wish you had invested more time and effort into to better prepare yourself for the transition to the AE role? So this could be for anyone to take, but I think this will actually take us into our next question nicely. So what do you wish you had invested more time to prepare yourself in advance of that transition to AE?
Yeah, I can start on this one. I think I did end up doing this towards the end of my time as a ADR, but I wish I did it earlier, of following up on the opportunities that after you get credit, the op is qualified or whatever that looks like at your company. I think sometimes we can just be like, okay, cool, and we move on. I got my credit, and I'm done with that. Follow up, ask how it went, follow up a week later, did they close it? And a month later, what happened after that? Keep asking, and ask like, what, even if you get a flip from it, or that's what we call it here, even if you get credit for it, ask what could have been better, like what could have teed this up to be perfect. Because the difference when you are an ADR versus an AE is you take that op that you sourced, now you drive it to the finish line. So how can you make that job easier for the AE that you're working with? Ask them. They'll love to, especially if it's in like a pod system where you're working with them consistently, they'll love that question. And it'll help you. You can, tee yourself up with better opportunities in the future.
Absolutely. Very well said. Great question, Labrela, and keep the questions coming. Always appreciate those. As we move forward, now we're thinking about, you've gotten your promotion. This is the part that we're all excited about. We get the promotion, but then what next? Because it's kind of scary. Like you're in a new role, you're kind of getting acclimated. You haven't been in this role before. So what are those first steps that you take when beginning the new role to ensure that you're going to be successful? And Carolyn, let's start with you for this.
Yeah. The first thing I do is really just get myself organized. I'm pretty process driven, so I like to know where everything lives, what reports I need, and how I'm being measured, and where to go when I have questions. So having that structure early on helps me feel grounded, and especially when everything's new. But I'm a really big believer in make those relationships right away. I really like knowing who to lean on, when there's that question. Where's the Slack channel for that? Because your team is such a good resource for those questions, especially in the beginning, and having a few go-to people makes a really big difference. But another thing I love to do is just make sure you're paying attention to what top performers are doing. What's their process? How are they winning? I'm not really trying to copy it exactly, but it gives me an idea how to start my own journey and, make my own rhythm. And honestly, just embrace the chaos. You're going to mess up. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but just being able to lean on people and be excited about learning things new will help you get off on the right foot.
Yeah, absolutely. Juliana, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think Caroline brought up a lot of really good points. For me personally, the relationships was key because it is very chaotic and you are a little confused and you're not sure where to start. And so it does take time. But when you have a group of people you can trust, primarily within your team, you establish a relationship that you can lean on them as well. So I think that was a really good point and something that I had a lot of value in when I was new, but also something I really recommend continuing. Like I continuously put time on other AEs calendars. So I'm continuing to learn and have a wider network, especially when you're in that ADR world. It's such a great community that when you move to AE, people are all different ages. They're coming from different companies. It's a whole new realm. And so you want to build your brand and establish yourself and show that you're a team player early on, because I think that comes back to you. And I'll also say like a lot of the new stuff when you're going from ADR to AE is like the pricing, the negotiation, and taking that opportunity across the final line. So something that I found really helpful was going back to, if your company has like a tool for, ours is called Gong, where you can go and watch demos, being able to watch them, pausing them, and then doing them yourself. So I was like going into the platform and actually physically practicing and like responding to questions from customers as if I was that AE. So giving yourself the almost like motor skills to be an AE before you're actually on your first call.
Love that advice. That is a great piece of advice right there. Megan, what about you? Anything to add?
I just doubled down on what the ladies already said. Be a squeaky wheel, keep asking questions, and also be collaborative when you're in these, coffee chats with people or syncs, call blocks, whatever that looks like. Especially if you're coming from ADR, you've come from such a environment that's so rich in cold calling, whereas as an AE, your role is a bit more diversified, so you're kind of a step removed from that. You have some input that you can give too. So don't feel like you can't be part of the team right from the bat and that you have to wait until you get your footing. We just had an ADR start on my team last week, and we were already asking him, how do you respond to this objection that you usually get? Because I don't know, I haven't cold called in a while. I kind of forget. And, it's helpful to hear different people's perspectives. So don't feel like you can't give your own point of view as well right away.
Absolutely. There's so much value in also, whether you're an AE, a leader, the people who are on the front lines are your ADRs. So there is always advice that you can take. This is always the best place to ask about like what's working prospecting wise, because they're doing the highest volume. So couldn't agree more. And, as we're thinking about this transition from ADR to AE, I know one of the biggest questions people have is, what are some of the hardest parts? Because it is a completely different role. And, I know we get so excited about moving from one to the other, but then once we're there, there are challenges. So Megan, can you start us off with just talking about what some of the hardest parts of making that transition are?
Yeah, definitely. So I know this isn't exactly the question, but first of all, the hardest part about being an AE is always going to be getting enough people to talk to. So if you're coming from ADR, you already know how to do the hardest part. So I think that, might be a good feeling, is that you already know how to conquer the hardest part. However, once you do transition, I think the most challenging part is that you're not necessarily going to see those quick wins that you might have been seeing. As an ADR, you are, getting your opportunity qualified quicker in the sales cycle. So you don't have to wait until it actually closes, until you actually get that DocuSign in. Now you have to wait until they go and they talk to the other people at their company, or, until all those different parts come in and you finally get that, DocuSign in your inbox there. So it takes a little bit longer. And I think just retraining your brain that just because you're not seeing necessarily a number on the board right now of how much ACV you've closed doesn't mean you're not doing a good job. It's the activity that goes in before. And again, back to the ADR roots there. As long as you're doing that, you're going to be in a good spot. So I think just, rewiring your brain of what does it mean to be doing a good job. And you can get with your manager on that too. And make sure that you're doing everything right if you are concerned. Because sometimes it will be a little bit before you see a win. I didn't close my first net new logo until over a month in role when I transitioned to AE, and that's a little bit further than most folks there. So that can be discouraging. But I think just remembering, that it's all the little steps, not just the close that'll come. You have to give it time.
Absolutely. The little ones become the big ones. So what about you, Juliana? Anything to add here in terms of like some of those hard parts about making that transition?
Yeah, I think just touching a little bit on what Megan said, it is a huge mindset switch, and it can be almost hard if you haven't been in an AE role to trust yourself that you can do this. At least those are some of the doubts that maybe I faced in the beginning, especially when you're so used to looking at that leaderboard. So being able to kind of separate that is really important. But just trusting, especially if you're an ADR to AE promote, like you have this huge advantage that you've been cold calling into Sam's or your company, blank company, customers for a very long time. So you have that, home team advantage. You also have the advantage of knowing your product, right? And there was a lot of times when I first started, where I was like, oh, I don't know the product as well as I think I do. But then I was really surprised by how many questions I could answer about our product. So just trusting that you are meant for this role, you know a lot, and you'll just add on to your skills, is something I would recommend. Something that I found really hard was just diversifying your responsibilities. Like, I was very great at focusing on just setting a meeting, and I would just spend my whole day focusing on setting a meeting. Whereas when you're in AE, sometimes there's weeks where building pipeline is less important for me, and just getting things to close is more important. So you have a lot of shift of responsibilities. In some AE roles, you also have to, like in ours, we have to support customers. So we have to help with technical questions a lot of times, support questions. There's a whole other side of the AE world when it comes to supporting your current customers and inherited customers. So just finding the different buckets that you have to succeed in, whatever it is at your company, and then making sure you're managing your time wisely. So putting some time blocks on my calendar and like really holding true to those was something that helped me like overcome that challenge.
Amazing. We are going to double back. We had a good another Q&A question. So any other thoughts on this question as far as like some of those challenges in moving from ADR to AE? Okay. I'm gonna save the last question that I had for last. So let's go to Dominic's question, and then we'll go to mine. But how would you best prepare for the mentorship program? What do managers want to see? And this could be for any of you.
I think managers want to see that, one, you've gone the extra mile, like outside of the typical ADR space, because if you're in the mentorship program, there's probably a group of very successful ADRs similar to you that have also hit quota consistently for a period of time. So finding ways to set yourself apart, I think, like making sure that at least for us, we have like physical hardware that we can test out our own product. So I think that was something that kind of put me ahead, as I had experience working with our product hands-on. Also just networking, I think, is a huge piece that maybe I didn't prioritize as much when I was going to make that transition. You want to make sure that you're, engaging and likable, and really want to get to know the manager on the other side, and maybe other managers or other directors in the AE space. Build a brand within them so that they feel like, oh, I know Juliana, or I know whoever, and I know that they've done XYZ to set themselves above. So coming in with really pointed questions. These managers are busy, and they get a lot of these like meetings put on their calendar, and maybe they have multiple mentors. So making sure you're using the time like very intentionally will have like a lasting impact on them. And that's something that they'll remember when you go to interview.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Megan?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think something I just completed my first quarter as a manager and did the mentorship on the other end for the first time. And I previously was an ADR mentee. On my side of things, like, I have to take a risk on you, right? For most people, this is your first time going into a closing role if you're coming from ADR to AE. So make me feel comfortable taking a risk on you. Why should I take a risk on you? And ways you can do that are show me that you're coachable. Show me how you act in a situation where you don't have all the information, or if I give you something to work on, show me that you worked on it and what happened there. For instance, if we work on something on a gong call, maybe a different talk track, come back the next week and say, I tried this. This is what it looked like. And, show me how that skill worked for you, because it's totally okay if you don't have all the pieces when you're coming to AE. I don't expect that. I just expect that you're willing to work in the areas that you don't have it all figured out yet. So as long as I know that you're coachable and that you're driven, that's the most important thing. So just show me that, so that way I can, go into when I'm thinking of my team next quarter, I have no hesitations of, why I shouldn't add my mentee, because, I know that we can make up any of those gaps there.
Amazing. Such good advice here. We're going to go into a rapid fire question to finish the conversation, but then we're going to talk a little bit about open roles at Samsara, because I know a lot of you are currently job seeking. And I also dropped a link into the Women in Sales Slack community. So if you like to continue the conversations, get access to other events that we're hosting, we have a bunch coming up with Samsara. So highly recommend getting into the Slack community if you're not there yet. But for each of you, what is the kind of rapid fire one final piece of advice you'd leave our audience members with if they want to get promoted in 2025? And we'll start with you, Caroline.
Yeah. If there's one piece of advice I give, I would say document every little win. If it's big, small, even moments where you've helped someone else or figured out something on your own, it matters. It's easy for those things to slip through the cracks. So just being able to stay organized and remember those things, they're really going to help you when you come time to interview, because you want to tell a story, not just be able to talk about metrics, but you want to talk about how you think, how you work, and what impact you've had. And having those examples written down makes it so much easier to connect the dots. And I just really think it's important to just track it, own it, and don't be afraid to speak about it when the time comes.
Yes, big fan of that. Juliana, what about you?
Yeah, I think Caroline had a great answer there. Like, for sure, document your wins, because that's what you're going to be talking about in an interview. For my answer, I'm going to say be prepared. I think going into it, you're so comfortable with your current role. You may think that the shift or the upgrade or the promotion is a little bit of a natural, something that might happen to you. I would just say be really prepared, practice your interview questions over and over again, go the extra mile, and make it really known that you're doing so, because you will stand out.
Absolutely. And Megan, take us home.
Yeah, definitely. So I think back to what I said with the mentorship program, show that you're driven, show that you're coachable. I would also say, if you're going into an interview, think about, if you were in the interviewer's shoes, what would their hesitation be of bringing you on, and own that. I think if you can reframe the narrative about it, then it kind of allows you to position yourself a bit better. And definitely ask them if you're not sure what that is, or even if you are sure what that is, definitely ask if they have any hesitations. And then lastly, I would say, if you aren't necessarily tapped for like the mentorship, or you aren't tapped for whatever that looks like at your company, ask why you weren't and how you can improve on to get better. I think it's challenging sometimes when it is something that you get tapped for and you can't necessarily, there are certain metrics you have to hit, and just really understand, what do you need to get to the next step.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, we're going to close out on a high note, which is, Megan, can you talk a little bit about Samsara open roles? Because I know we have some job seekers here. I know they are excited about potentially starting a career at Samsara. So if you can tell us a little bit about some of the key roles or advice you'd have.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at our careers page, under sales specifically, there would be some open roles there. I believe all of our ADR offices are probably hiring, if I'm not mistaken. So take a look at those. If you are currently in an ADR, SDR, BDR type role, or you're looking to get into those, definitely take a look at those. And then if you are an AE right now, or you are in a closing full cycle sales role, especially if you have outbound experience prior, definitely take a look at our commercial AE role. That one is fully remote. The ADR one, you do need to live near an office, but the AE one is fully remote. So definitely, no matter where you live, feel free to look at those ones.
Amazing. And I also just dropped a link in, because we have an in-person event together with Samsara and Women in Sales next week in Atlanta. I will be flying in for this one. That's how cool it's going to be. So I just dropped the RSVP link in. Feel free to join us. We'd love to have you. And thank you all so much, Caroline, Juliana, Megan. Thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing all of your wisdom. Congratulations to each of you on going through that career path and making it to where so many of our members want to get to, and for being an inspiration to them. And thank you, Samsara, for continuing to partner with us and bring even more amazing knowledge to the Women in Sales community.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, everyone. Bye.